get started, and then if there's some stragglers, you want to give them another minute, or what do you want to do? It's your call.
I'm rolling on your time, on your dime. So.
Right. Maybe I'll just give it 1 minute.
Yeah, you know your people, so. So how come you guys aren't sitting in the back?
We tried. Somebody saved the seat. Just so you know, I always love it when someone grabs a chair and there's 18 million chairs in.
Yeah.
They ain't tall enough to sit in front of your camera.
No, yes.
Guys, maybe we're going to get started here. For those that know me, you know me. If you don't, my name is Koen. I'm the Wright County Attorney. And we have a leadership committee that department heads, we meet on a monthly basis. We get together, we chat about life. And as an offshoot of those leadership committee meetings, we thought it might be appropriate. I think it's been about 23 years since I remember the talking nuns in this room. The last time I remember anybody to come and talk to the Wright County employees. I'm really big with regard to what it is that we do, and that is that we deal with people. Whether you're dealing with your co-workers or whether you're dealing with the public, that's what we do. We don't make widgets, and that's just the reality of where we're at. And so it's really big with regard to people skills, attitude, and how you project and rock and roll and carry on with people, etc. And so it's kind of nice over the last couple of years, got to know Andre, seen a couple of his presentations. And so anyhow, we're going to have a little presentation. And I just want to let you all know that Wright County had a great turnout with regard to the 4 presentations that we're going to be putting on with regard to the employees. And so with that said, Andre Koen is an energetic presenter, a powerful communicator, and a dynamic teacher. His educational influence spans North American continent. Andre integrates his abilities as an improv comedian, large group facilitator, keynote speaker, and a classroom teacher to captivate and educate his audiences. There are many words to define Andre. You can look at educator, student, improv comedian, speaker, activist, facilitator, coach, mentee, mentor, leader, team member, community organizer, diversity trainer, motivator, friend, and son. But probably the most that depicts with regard to Andre is the enkindled spirit. So with that, let us welcome Andre Koen, who is the president and founder of AM Horizons.
All right. It is so embarrassing to hear the stuff that you wrote about yourself back to you. So I do want to tell you that one of the most important experiences that has shaped who I am was being a high school teacher. And so a lot of the stuff that I will share with you is stuff that I learned as a high school teacher. I don't know about you, but oftentimes as a professional, you go to school, you learn all of this stuff, and then there's the real world, which is putting those things in practice. So I'm going to share with you some of the stuff that I learned being a high school teacher. Also, I don't like using a microphone. Do I need a microphone? Okay, cool. So there's that. So being a high school teacher, one of the things that I would do is I would teach to the test. I don't know if, people have theories and thoughts about, if that's good teaching or bad teaching or whatever. But when my students took the test, they typically did what? They passed it, right? So if that's good teaching or not, I don't know. But so I teach to the test. And when I taught high school on Fridays, I would go through all the material during the week, and every Friday we would have a pop quiz. So my students were very surprised every Friday that we have this pop quiz. But the thing that made them, even more excited was the fact that they knew the stuff that was on the pop quiz. They were amazed. They were like, I know this answer. And I'm like, yes, right? And so what I'd like to do for you is I want to give you a pop quiz. All right? But because I teach to to the test, it's important that I give you the what? The answers. All right? So I'm going to give you the answers. And the answers go like this. Fantastic. Terrific. Great. All day long. Huh. All right? So that's how the answer goes. So let's practice. So please stand up. So we're going to practice the answer. The answer is fantastic, terrific, great, all day long. Huh. Now, I will tell you that if you don't do it, you look goofy and everybody else looks cool. All right? Just so you know. All right? So that's the answer. All right? The question is this. Wright County, how do you feel?
Fantastic, terrific, great, all day long.
All right. It is very clear that there are Lutherans here. I happen to be an evangelical, so we're like all excitable and stuff. And Lutherans are very much the same way, except they keep it contained. So I want you to let out your inner enthusiasm, and I'll ask the question again. Wright County, how do you feel?
Fantastic, terrific, great, all day long.
Very good. Have a seat. Have a seat. So give yourselves a hand for that. All right, how many people felt really goofy doing that? Or like, that was really dumb, right? How do you think people who come to us for services often feel about our processes? Right? And so one of the things, I know that's a little energizer and it's a fun thing, but I want us to keep in mind how goofy we felt doing that or how uncomfortable we may have been doing that, because people who are coming to us for help also feel that way. Particularly, and it's so funny, I work for Anoka County during the day, and at night I put on my cape and I come out to Wright County. And one of the things that I'm really noticing is that there are people who've never been a part of the system, who are now in situations where they have to lose face to get help in ways that they never had to before. And sometimes our systems, because systems are designed to take care of themselves, sometimes we don't remember that we're dealing with people. And so a lot of the stuff that we'll talk about is how do we deal with people, and what is diversity, and how do we show respect, and how do we get respect. So we'll talk about all of those things. All right. If anybody was here for the anatomy class, that is canceled. All right. So there's that. So we'll go ahead and get started. We only have a little bit of time, so I won't waste yours. I got a blank slide. Okay. So before I show that, I'm going to show this video, and then I want you to tell me what's going on in the video. Here we go. All right, so what's going on here? What's obviously going on? So he wants attention. What else?
Getting frustrated.
He's getting frustrated. What else? They're provoking him. Okay. What else do you notice? What do you see, or what assumptions can you make?
He wants some attention.
That he wants some attention. Can we assume that this is probably not the first time he's done this? Okay. Can we assume that now, I don't know if anybody else noticed, but the dog was so funny. That was the funniest part to me, because he was just following along. And yeah, so this probably isn't his first time doing this. And why does he continually do this?
Because it worked at one point.
Because it's worked. Because it's worked. So one of the things that I do know that there's a lot of training going on, and it's mostly been on his part. He's trained his parents pretty well, but now they've gotten hip to the game, right? So he does that because it works. Now, when will he stop doing that? When it no longer works. I mean, he might be, 25, 30 before that happens, but eventually he will stop doing that because it no longer works. All right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about my approach, because I think that is the key to working with people. Finding out what works and why they do things, and then organizing our strategies to help them accomplish their goals. So first of all, people can learn, change, and grow. At any point, as helpers, as government officials, if we ever forget that is the time we need to retire. Even if we, I arrest the same guy for drinking alcohol, I have to hold out for him that there is a hope that he can change. And it's really funny. There are some race scientists who believe that that IQ and certain types of behaviors can be and are genetically encoded into who we are, right? And like one of the videos that I showed, and I have some of that stuff on my website if you're ever interested in that, talks about the strata of IQ, and that the lowest IQ is in the interior of Africa, that the next highest IQ is in Europe, and then the highest IQ is in Asia. And so he talks about all this stuff and how it's genetically encoded. And I just thought about this, like, IQ for what? Right? You take me, for example. Put me on a farm. I'm an idiot. Right? You take a farm kid, put him in the middle of the city. He's an idiot. Right? And so, a lot of the times we talk about these things and what's the purpose. But people can learn, change, and grow. And why do I choose not to believe that my genes determine my behavior?
I would take that out.
Because that would take that out, all right?
It would, yeah, then you can't learn.
Then you can't learn and you can't change. You're destined to be who your genes have dictated. And some of the genes in my family, whew, right? All human behavior is goal-directed, which means that people are doing things because they what?
Want to accomplish something.
They have a goal. They have a goal. They're going to accomplish something. Now, the funny thing is, people's behaviors and what they think is going to accomplish their goals always don't match up, right? So people may think they have this goal, but they exhibit this behavior that's not going to get them to that goal, which leads me to the next point. People do what makes sense to who? To them, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else, right? So they're doing this because they think it makes sense. And lastly, attitude is a response to a goal. All right? How many people have been a teenager? Been around teenagers, right? Teenagers are full of attitude, right? So describe that attitude. Rebellious, they know it all. What else? They're disrespectful. When we talk about attitude, we typically talk about some kind of emotional response to external stimuli, right? And it's funny because my parents were when I was a kid, they were going to college, and so we were the subject of a lot of psychology experiments, right? And so my mother would say stuff like, you know, go to your room till your father gets home. Go to your room till you learn how to act. And one day I figured it out. So I was in my room for a while, and then I stepped out into the hall and I said, to be or not to be? I spent a lot of time in my room. All right. But that wasn't what she was talking about. What was she talking about in terms of changing my attitude?
Think about it.
To think about it. Okay? Be more respectful. What's that?
Meet her expectations.
Meet her expectations. All right. So, my dad was my pastor. So growing up, my dad was my pastor. On Sundays, we would we open up the church at 7:30 a.m. because we had 8 o'clock Bible school. So 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. We'd stop at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. So that was Sunday. All day Sunday was church. So I asked my dad, I say, Dad, can I borrow the car Friday night? And because my dad loves me, what does he say? He says, yes, he loves me, right? So I take the car out, I hang out with my friends, I even put gas in the car. My dad says, I have what kind of an attitude? A positive attitude. And I say, my dad has what kind of an attitude? A positive attitude, all right? Sunday, my friend Dexter calls me and says, Andre, can you pick me up for the show, the movie? And so I know what Sunday's about, but I'm feeling really gutsy this day, right? So I go up to my dad and I say, Dad, can I use the car? And what does my dad say? No. He says no, and he gives me a lecture. He's like, boy, you know, we're going to church, and you know. And so I say my dad has what kind of an attitude? A negative or bad attitude. And what does he say about my attitude? That it is also bad. So what is it that determines an attitude? The situation, state of mind, opposition, starts with G and ends in O. Your goal. When you reach your goal, you have a good attitude. When you don't reach your goal, you have a bad or poor attitude. Right? I mean, just think about teenagers. When they get what they want, it's almost as if they purr. Right? And they want to be all close to you and all sorts of stuff. Right? But when they don't get what they want, they smell so bad. Right? That attitude is just so funky. So attitude is determined by your goal. So this is a picture of a snapshot of my life. All right. So this is me as a little baby. Ooh, wasn't I cute? And then this is me with the bow tie that's as big as my head. It's my brother Will and my sister Crystal. And this is my family in our Cosby years. If you look close, you can see Vanessa and Theo, and right. And then, okay, I gotta admit this. I love Facebook and I hate Facebook. Right. So on Facebook, I'm highly evolved now. You know, I eat organic. I have vermiculture, so I do composting in my kitchen. I do yoga. I do manscaping. You know. So I'm highly evolved. So I put all this image out there, and there are people who knew me before I made this transition, and they keep putting up pictures blowing my image, right? So here's one of these pictures. So this is my friend Samisha, this is Sharon, and then this is me. And then Samisha's left hand, she's holding an Uzi. The gun, right? So she's holding an Uzi, and I'm holding to Sharon's head a double-barreled sawed-off shotgun. Now I heard that you're like, ooh, right? So, okay, I'm not who I used to be. Let me just say that. And my pants are sagging. Right? So I'm holding that gun. So, but I have to give you the context, all right? Because the context makes all the difference. Now, we were at a concert. Now, and if you know what the band plays, that's great. But I think the name of the band will kind of give you the context at which we were kind of hanging out and why these guns are there, right? So the name of the band that was playing was Public Enemy, right? So even, so just put that together. So I'm holding the gun. And I thank God that I don't have to be Public Enemy anymore. And so I am my father's son. In 1968, what was going on in the world? Vietnam cities were burning. What else? What else? Civil rights, okay? All sorts of things were happening. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I'm African American. I didn't want anybody to be alarmed, okay? And my parents were African American. And in 1968, they were seniors in high school. And one event could have had a huge impact on my African American parents in 1968. The assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. I forgot to tell you, this is these are my grandparents, and these are my two uncles, and that's my dad, right there in the middle. And so in 1968, my dad turned 18. My parents graduated from high school. My dad said, I want to do something about the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And my grandfather said, great, but do it someplace else. Right? So my dad goes off to college, and he joins this group called the Black Panthers. Now, I don't know what you know about Black Panthers or what you think you know about Black Panthers, but primarily they were a political party that wanted to lift up poor people, and specifically poor black people, right? So and one of the remnants of the Panther Party's struggle and platform is something called the Federal School Lunch Program. The government said, Panthers, we like that idea, but we don't like you. So my father was a Panther, and then in 1970, the most amazing, beautiful, incredible thing that could ever happen to my father happens. I was born. And at that point, he realizes that the revolution is no place for a family, and that the retirement plan for revolutionaries sucks. So he cuts his afro, takes off his leather jacket, and he gets an L7 square job, a regular 9 to 5. And on that regular 9 to 5, he gets a call from God. Now what happens when you get a call from God? You answer, right? I was in one session, the guy said, you run. And I'm like, where? Where do you go? Where do you go, Jonah? Right? So my father became an evangelical Pentecostal fire baptized preacher. Hallelujah! Yeah, I am my father's son. So in my presentation, if it seems like I'm getting a little political, it's not my fault. If it feels like I'm preaching, well, that just goes with it. And some of you may say, you know what, I'm a good guy, or I'm a good lady, and I'm on your team. And so you're just preaching to the choir. But in the words of my father, the choir needs preaching too. All right? So that's a little bit about me. So let's talk a little bit about diversity. If I ask 100 people what diversity was, how many responses do you think I would get? 100. Probably 100. Our attorneys say 200. Right? So when you think of diversity, what are some of the things you think about? Differences. What is diversity? Ethnicities, religions, okay. All right, sexual orientation, culture, attitude. As a teacher, if I gave all of my students a test and they all gave me different answers, what can I say about my teaching ability? Am I a good teacher?
Yeah, depends on the answers are right or wrong.
Was it an essay?
If I gave everybody 2 plus 2 equals 4, and somebody gave me a 6 and somebody gave me 7, I got a 1. as the teacher, I would have to take some responsibility. It is interesting, though, that a lot of times we do blame the students, but that's a whole nother political conversation we could have later, right? So one of the things that often happens, particularly when we talk about diversity, we don't know what we're talking about. We don't have a clear idea of what it is. And so what I'd like to do is offer you a new way of thinking about diversity in ways that are real practical. All right? So here we go. So first, to tell you what diversity is, I want to tell you what it's not. All right? So first of all, diversity is not political correctness. We did a really good job in the 90s of pausing people before they said dumb stuff. But political correctness has become what? It's the standard. Stupid. It's a joke, for crying out loud, right? I don't know what to call people anymore. You know, and it was funny. Some people were were at the water cooler and they were trying to describe somebody, and they were like, you know, it's the guy with arms. The guy with the, you know, he's got the, his hair's kind of crunchy. No, the black guy, is that what you're talking about? And they were like, somebody said it, right? Political correctness has become so cumbersome that it's almost silly, right? And it's so funny because I was in a training once, and a woman stands up and she says, Andre, I want to know why all the colored people are moving into my neighborhood. And what do you think the audience said? Were you there? Right? That's exactly what they said. And why'd they go? Because colored is not politically correct. But you can say people of color. But that's a whole nother conversation too, right? But color is not politically correct. And the interesting thing is, as she stood there, what I recognized was that she did not have a lot of stamps in her passport. That her educational level hadn't given her all the tools and fancy words that other people had. And so when she stood up, she had the courage to stand up and ask a question that came from her heart. And what was my responsibility to her? To answer her question. We could talk about all the fancy words and all that kind of stuff, but this woman had a pure question that came from her heart. And so my responsibility was to answer her question. Because I've also been in contact with folks who have the right words, and as they're talking, your skin just crawls. Right? Because they have the right words. So it's not about political correctness. And people always ask me, you know, Andre, when we talk about diversity, why does it always come back to black and white? And I want to offer you this. That black and white is both a metaphor, darkness and lightness, right? Black and white. And it is also a racial construct. And the reason that we keep going back to this is because we haven't passed algebra. We want to go on to trigonometry, but we haven't passed algebra. There are still ways in terms of looking at the black and white construct that there are lessons that we can tease out that we haven't learned yet. So that's why we keep going back to that, and that's why that's not just diversity either. It's also not blame, fault, or guilt. Do babies care who changes them? No. A lot of times when we talk about racism or sexism or homophobia or religious bias, we want to lay blame, fault, and guilt on folks. But the baby doesn't care. The problem doesn't care. It just needs to be resolved, right? And when you blame, fault, and guilt people, do they say, thank you, now I'm energized to be a part of the solution? No. They get alienated, they entrench in their values, and they do not participate. All right? Diversity is also not therapy. And it was funny, someone asked me, you know, were you part of that training where people were crying and all that kind of stuff? No, that's not me. All right? There are trainers who really get happy to hear people's horror stories and how bad they've had it and get people to cry and have these emotional discharges, and that's not me. Therapy is great, and I say get some, you know, when you need it. But that's not what diversity is. And it's also not meritocracy. And meritocracy is the concept that if you work hard enough, you can be just like me. What's the problem with that? What if I don't want to be you? Right? So how does that help me? And it would be a shame if LeBron James had to play basketball like I do. That would be a shame, right? So it's not about meritocracy, because we also know that systems aren't set up the same for everybody, right? Beautiful people get better jobs than those of us who are, average, right? Just look at all the stars. You don't ever see hardly any, except for Christopher Walken. That is an ugly dude. I don't know what is going on there. So meritocracy. And lastly, diversity is not about tolerance. And I get nervous around around other diversity people because they're like, wait a minute, there are books and websites and people talk about, tolerance. Isn't diversity about tolerance? What does tolerance mean?
It's barely accepting.
Barely accepting. What else? Putting up with. All right. So I love my brother-in-law. I love my sister and I love their kids. That dude came to visit. I tolerated that dude. Why? Because I knew when he was going home. They came on a Friday. I knew they were going home on Sunday. I could make it, right? A lot of times when we talk about tolerance, we talk about putting up with something until we no longer have to. And are our communities getting less diverse? Are our human relations getting less complicated? And my answer to that is no. And so it's not tolerance. And I hear some of those thought bubbles above your head, right? That, isn't political correctness and meritocracy and tolerance, aren't those good first steps to diversity? And my answer is simply this. Babies drink milk. Why do babies drink milk? They don't have a choice. I want some filet mignon, Why else do babies drink milk?
They need it to live.
They need it to live. But why milk specifically? It's easy for the mom to produce. What else? It's the earliest form of nourishment that they can take in, right? It's the earliest form of nourishment that they can take in. So political correctness, meritocracy, and tolerance, it's like that milk. It's the very first step, and that's a great first step. But at some point, babies move from milk to tofu. I'm part vegetarian. I guess that makes me an omnivore. Yeah, okay. So that's what diversity is not. So Andre, you're so smart. So what is diversity? What I'd like to offer you is this. That diversity is the fact that there's dignity and honor in being human. What is dignity? What's dignity? It's pride. Okay. What else is dignity? Self-esteem, self-respect. All right. Is dignity something that I have or something that I can give? It's a trick question. It is both. All right. It is something you have and something that you can give. And so okay. So I used to live in South Minneapolis. And in South Minneapolis, there are a bunch of guys, I don't know if you guys have them out here, but they'd be on the entrance and exit ramps of highways with cardboard signs that say, we'll work for, we'll work for food, we'll work for whatever, money, whatever. And so I see those guys and I give them lots of stuff. Guess what I don't give them? Money, right? You feed a stray cat, it keeps coming back, all right? So I don't give them money, but what I do give them is dignity. And how do I do that? How do you think I do that? I acknowledge them. I make eye contact with them. It's so funny because I see it on the street all the time. They'll see like a panhandler or somebody who looks scruffy, and as people get closer to them, it's amazing. Phones start going off for no reason. Hi, right? But I make eye contact with them. Sometimes I ask them their story if I have time, right? Dignity is acknowledging the existence of another person and their right to exist. So that's giving dignity. And the funny thing about dignity is if you don't give it, people will try and take it. For example, I would make the assumption that because these people are young, they might cross the street a little faster. Have you ever been at a traffic light or at a stop sign and a group of teenagers are crossing the street, they take forever, right? And then, I used to think it was because their pants were sagging, but I don't, because I've seen them pull them up and, get moving. But what I realized was what they were saying to me as they're passing in front of my car, and some of them like make eye contact, like, yeah, right? So they make eye contact with you, and what I realized was that they were saying, you and your kind, whoever they think I am, don't ever see us, but you will see me now, right? What they don't understand, though, is that I don't have any points on my license and really good car insurance, right? So there's dignity. What is honor? What is honor? What does it mean to honor? What's that?
Doing what's difficult.
Doing what's difficult? Honor. Integrity is honor. What else? What's that? Respect. Honor. What is honor?
Standing up for your moral values.
Standing up for your moral values. Holding something up. Okay. Cool. Senator Obama. I'm downtown Chicago, and I see Senator Obama, and I affectionately call him OB. Right? So I'm like, what's up, OB? And he's like, hey, Andre, how are you? We come in, we do the hand thing he likes to do. So we're like, shh, with the exploding fist on the end, right? So I just gave Senator Obama respect. Now, Senator Obama becomes the highest office in the land, President Obama. How do I greet now President Obama?
Mr. President.
I don't. Right? But, because if I tried to do it like I did with Senator Obama, I'd be like, hey man, what's going on? It'd be like, Secret Service would be all over me, right? Unless I was in Florida, but that's a whole nother conversation too. So now I give President Obama honor. Before I gave Senator Obama respect. So now I'm giving this respect at a high level. And why do I respect President Obama?
He's the president.
Because he's the president. It's the office that honor, that deserves that honor, right? And so who in our society have we decided are people that we need to honor or give high respect to? Who? Veterans, right? So men and women who have served and fought wars on our behalf. We said we want to give them honor. Who else? Our parents. Because they birthed us, right? They did things for us that we couldn't do. Police men and women, service folks in other service arenas like the schools and so forth. We said that we will give them a high level of respect or honor. Please let me know, please raise your hand if you can answer yes to either of these two questions. Raise your hand if you either purchased a ticket or passed a test that made you eligible to be born on this planet. None of us have done anything to bring ourselves here. We simply responded to an invitation. I don't want to think about how that invitation came. It's disgusting. But we responded to an invitation to be here. And we're constantly trying to figure out what it is it means to be here. All right? And then lastly, the last part of this diversity definition is human. And when I looked at human in the dictionary, what I found was that it has two definitions. One is a noun, which deals with being a biped, having 2 feet, opposable thumbs, a big brain, and a belly button. If you ever encounter a person without a belly button, be concerned. All right? So, Homo sapiens sapien, the one that knows that they know that they exist. That's us, the noun. But what I also found out was that human is also an adjective. And what do adjectives do? They describe, right? Now, I do have to say this because I got in trouble once. I was working with some attorneys, and there was an animal rights lawyer, and she like chewed me up one side and down the other, no pun intended. But so I have to say this. And so what I'm not saying is that animals do not have emotions. I'm not saying that animals don't have sentience, and I'm not saying that animals don't have a desire of their own. However, there are things that I expect from human beings that if my dog did, I would be surprised. So what kinds of things can I expect from human beings that I might not expect from my pet? Self-awareness. What else? Verbal communication. Okay, what else? What about our human relationships? What do I expect about our human relationships?
Much more complicated than dogs.
They're much more complicated than dogs. What else? I didn't hear that last one. What was that? You have no expectations of human relations. You have no expectations of the people you live with, the people that you work with, the people you drive on the roads with. You have no expectations of them.
That they'll understand you and, I don't know.
That people will understand you. What else do you expect?
Respect.
You expect respect, right? What else? Communication. Commitment. Support. Being honest. Being fair. Animals live by what rule? Law of the jungle. Strongest survive. Dog eat dog. Urgh. As human beings, what do we live by?
Same thing.
Then that would make us no different than a dog.
Our expectations are dropping.
How many people think that you are a dog? Right? Nobody raised their hand. So what do we live by? We don't live by.
I'd like to live by a higher ideal. I just don't know
What's the higher ideal called? Law. It's called law. It's the basis of a civil society. We say that there are things that we can do as human beings. There are things that we can do, but we won't do them because we are human beings. Right? There's certain ways that we can treat people, but we say, you know what? As a human being, I will not treat people that way. All right? So we live by law. So we'll talk some more about that. One of the biggest things, and I love this picture, respect, the 5 reasons we don't get it. What's going on in the picture? He's got what? He's just got veggies, which I think he's better off with those than this other guy, right? What does the picture say? If you're big, you get what you want. What else does the picture say? That there's some selfishness going on. All right?
Not treating his son the same way he's treating himself.
Okay, he's not treating his son the same way he's treating himself. All right? So I want to talk a little bit about respect and 5 reasons we don't get it. First of all, one of the things that particularly adults we say is, do as I say, not as I do. We all know that what people do speaks so loudly we can't hear what they say, right? You know, I did not have sex with that woman. Yeah. Right, right? And it's so funny because people want to say the right thing, but the real proof in the pudding is how you live. Can you live what you're talking about, right? And it's and our teenagers are they're hypercritical about the fact that we need to be congruent, our lives need to be congruent with what we say. Because any time that they see an incongruence, they will bring it up and they will tell you about it. Right? Well, Mom, you said this, or Dad, you said this, but you're doing this. What's up with that? And then you're like, Well, it's more complicated than that, son. You know. But if we want respect, we have to do what we're saying. I'm going to skip number 2 and come back to that. Number 3, boys will be boys. That's just how things are. You have to get used to it. They won't change, right? How does that undermine this whole concept of respect? Has anybody heard that before? That's just how things are. Boys will be boys. How does that undermine an opportunity for respect?
You're saying you can't learn and you can't grow.
You're saying that you can't learn or you can't grow, or those people can't learn or those people can't grow, right? And it's funny because we had a high ranking official in the county who made an off-color remark, and I was just kind of like, I wasn't the only person who heard it, and I said, is anybody going to say anything about it? And they said, no, that's just how he is. I said, no. When we get slapped with a lawsuit, they're not going to say, that's just how he is. They're going to give this individual the money they request because his behavior is obtuse. He's exposing us to risk. So we have to be able to remember that people can learn, change, and grow. I don't care if they're 194 years old. They can still have an opportunity to learn, change, and grow. And we have to expect that people can rise to the occasion that we set. A lot of times people say, well, that's not my child. That's not my problem. So I'm not going to associate with that. What have we learned from the financial crisis? It affects everybody, right? And I found it really interesting because when it first started going down, the whole financial crisis, they were blaming all the poor people, right? The poor, they got mortgages they couldn't afford, blah, blah, blah. And then it became obvious that the people on the other end were also inappropriate with what they were doing, setting up Ponzi schemes and all sorts of stuff. So it really showed me how interconnected we are, and that a problem with your child is a problem with my child, right? Lastly, disrespect equals violence. And somebody said, well, what are you talking about? What is violence designed to do? What's that? To hurt. What else? To control. What else? Hold somebody down.
Diminish somebody.
Diminish someone. What else? To get your way with someone. What does disrespect do? Right? So disrespect is a form of violence. And one of the things that I would tell my students, and it would burn me up when I would hear them say this to each other, is that they would say, shut up, to each other. Have you heard people say that? Right? That's like the earliest form of violence. Because what it says is, what you have to say does not matter, so you don't exist. As a matter of fact, I want you to stop existing because your opinion doesn't matter. Right? So I think that's the earliest form of violence. And then one of the things that used to drive me crazy, particularly when I worked with my high school students, was that I would always have some student who would say, you have to earn my respect. Anybody heard somebody say that? Respect is to be earned. And I thought about it, and I would laugh, and they're like, what's funny? I was like, okay. So I have to earn your respect? He's like, yeah. And I said, okay, well, give me where's the checklist? Give me the final exam. How do I know that I have done enough to earn your respect? When can I stop? And guess what they had? Nothing. Right? One of the things that I've learned about respect is that respect can never be earned. It has to be given. Now, and here's the trick to it, right? You have to give respect to people who are being disrespectful to you. Everybody can box until they get punched. Right? It's easy to love somebody who loves you. But can you love somebody who has despitefully used you? Can you give respect to someone who has been disrespectful to you? Because this is the most powerful thing, right? So someone's being disrespectful to you. You're being respectful back to them. The person you're being respectful back to might not get it. But what do the people around you and the people watching this interaction say about you? What do they say? They say you're the bigger person. They're like, oh my God, I cannot believe how they took that. Can you believe, blah, blah, blah. What does that say about your actions? What does that say about who you are? Right? Now, a lot of the concepts that I'm going to give you kind of go against what popular culture says we must do. Because popular culture says, give them a piece of your mind. Tell them what you're thinking. Right? But what I'm suggesting is that we can help people change by changing us first. All right? So to get respect, I must give it, and I must be consistent with it. There's a lot of things that I am. Consistent is certainly one of them. All right? And so those are some things that we talk about in terms of respect. Any questions so far? Any comments? Does this stuff make sense? Okay. Is my afro too big and I'm like way in outer space kind of thing? Okay. Cool. Because I want to make sure that this is relevant. So I only made this assumption because we work in a place that has lots of paper and pens. So if you don't have a piece of paper or a pen, if you can get one from your neighbor, this would be a great time to do that. So go ahead and see if you can get a piece of paper or borrow a pen from your neighbor. Yes, I know. I knew I was in the right county. Oh. So let's actually. Does anybody have like a pad that they can give a couple of pieces of paper to some folks? All right, cool. If I can borrow. Oh, great. I'll just hand out a couple of pieces. There you go, sir. Okay, do you guys have paper?
He's our scribe.
No, you need your own. You need your own. All right. So what I'd like for you to do is, I don't have any extra pens or anything, so you may have to share. What I want you to do is I want you to draw 5 circles. 5 circles on that piece of paper. And I want you to put one thing that you value in each of those circles. Okay? So 5 circles, one thing that you value in each one of those circles. 5 different things that you value, one in each of those circles. All right? So 5 different things that you value, one in each of those circles. All right. So I think the people that are sharing all have their stuff. So looks like. Okay. I will not be giving demerits for people who, I know I'm a teacher and all that. All right, so this is what I want you to do. We're going to play a game, and even those people who didn't write their stuff down can still participate. All right? What I'd like for you to do is I'd like for each of you to find 2 people for each one of the things that you wrote down in those circles that either agree with or value what you value. Okay? So what you have on the piece of paper, once you found those individuals, I want them to put their initials in the circle. All right? So put their initials in the circle. I'm going to give you about a minute and a half. On your mark, Get set, go. All right, and stop. So, was anybody able to get all 10 people? Anybody able to get 10 people? All right, anyone able to get, let's say, 7 people? 5? 5 people? Okay, cool. 5 people. All right. As you were talking with folks, were there any delights or surprises as you heard what other people had on their paper or things you're like, oh yeah, I should have remembered that? What was one of those delights or surprises? Freedom.
Yeah.
All right. Please raise your hand if you value freedom, even if it wasn't written on your paper. Okay. Cool. What was another delight or surprise? Vacation time. Raise your hand if you value vacation time. All right. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Oh, you're disagreeing. Oh, you are just agreeing. Okay, cool. Was there another delight or surprise? Children. All right. So you were delighted and surprised that people value children. Please raise your hand if you value children, even if you don't have any. Okay, cool. A lot of times when we talk about diversity and we talk about, this kind of cultural competence stuff, we spend so much time talking about ways in which we're different that we don't spend enough time talking about things that make us more similar. Even in being surprised and delighted about those things, we're able to see how we're connected and how we're more similar than we often are not. And at the same time, we're so much more diverse than we oftentimes think about ourselves. Are there any white people in here? Please raise your hand if you are a white person. Okay, cool. Where is white?
In the trailer.
Don't say Duluth, okay? Where is white on the map? Before you were white, you were something else, right? That's what makes America great, is the fact that we all came from someplace else and we decided to become this thing we call America. And so oftentimes we forget what makes us different in ways that we don't often think about, right? So, but I also know that some of you, are Catholic and some of you are Lutheran and some of you are Swedish, and that's very important. And you know those differences. I might not know those differences. All right. Anyway, what I'd like for you to do is we're going to do if you take one and pass it down and back. I want to do a quick assessment with you. And this activity is called What I Learned Growing Up. And this is both from formal and informal teachers. I'll get you one in just a second. Do we have enough going down, back, and around? Here you go. So what I'd like for you to do is very simply, does everyone have one? Okay. You have extras? Okay, you just set them on the floor and I'll pick them up later. Thank you. So, these have been your teachers here, whether they had formal curriculum or not. These are people who have taught you about these groups. Now, I will say that this list of groups, these social groups, is not exhaustive. It is, in fact, to make a point. So I didn't include everybody that I could have, and I may have missed some people that I shouldn't have. But yeah. And so these are. So what did you learn from your family and your parents and family about African Americans or European Americans or Latino Americans or Asian Americans, disabled or Native Americans? And so if you learned something positive, I'd like for you to put a plus. If you've learned something negative, I want you to put a negative. If you've learned nothing, I want you to put a 0. All right? The size of your plus and the size of your minus determines how much you learned or how much you didn't learn. All right? And you can have pluses and minuses in the same box. All right? Does that make sense? And so what I'd like for you to do is to spend just a couple of minutes going through each of these categories and giving pluses, minuses, or zeros. All right? So the cards do take a little bit of tenacity, and I thank you for that. They're a little cooler or slicker than I thought they would be. But you can go for it. So I'll give you just a couple of minutes. Okay. I have a dry erase marker if anyone could use one. Okay. Here you go. All right, stop. I don't want to know what you have pluses and minuses and zeros in. That's none of my business. This card is for you, and it's an assessment of your life, or what you've learned or what you haven't learned. And so what I am curious about is, as you were filling out that card, were there any thoughts or emotions that were stimulated by going through this process? And what were they?
Doesn't matter what color a person is, it's more about their attitude.
Okay, so it doesn't matter what color a person is, it's more about their attitude. Yes, ma'am. Okay, how much TV, movies, and media do give us messages about other people? Okay. Other thoughts or emotions as you were going through this? Yes, sir.
It doesn't matter the group, they all have pluses and minuses.
Okay, so it doesn't matter the group, they all had pluses and minuses? Yes.
The people that I was more emotionally attached to, like family and friends, their positive or negative messages have a lot of influence, especially early on.
Okay.
There was a lot of emotional attachment to that influence.
Okay, so the people you were emotionally attached to had a lot of influence on how you saw the world. Okay, cool. Other folks, yes?
I found my environment had a lot more to do with my thoughts than my parents and family did.
Okay, so your environment.
But I grew up in East San Diego, so.
Okay, so your environment had a lot more to do
Yeah, than my parents.
than your parents did. Okay, Cool. Other folks, thoughts or comments?
Your personal experiences can change everyone else.
Your personal experiences could change everything else that people were telling you. And this was funny. I was just doing a workshop over in St. Michael, and it hit me like a lightning bolt in the middle of my presentation. I was like, ooh, I was kind of embarrassed to have this epiphany in front of all these people. But when I thought about this exercise, when I have negatives for folks, I have negatives for the whole group. But when I have positives for individuals that were in those groups. And I was like, wow! I mean, it just hadn't ever occurred to me that one way to kind of get over those negatives is to have that one positive individual in that group that you build a relationship with that will help turn the tide of all the negative stuff that you've heard or seen about these groups. Anything else before we move on?
How sheltered most of us probably are growing up. Parents and family, you're in a little white Lutheran community, and if, like you were saying, if the negatives outweigh it, if the one black man runs over your foot, you're going to have that negative for the whole.
Yeah, for the whole thing, right?
So we're so sheltered. I don't remember my folks ever talking, other than disabled. Be nice to everybody. I don't remember my folks talking to me about any other ethnicities or negatives or positives.
Negatives or positives, right?
I think your age, I grew up, it was cowboys and Indians. My children grew up Native Americans.
Okay.
Say the word Indian, period.
Okay. So your kids grew up saying Native Americans, where when you grew up it was cowboys and Indians, right? Yeah.
Whenever I grew up, my parents, when they didn't want us kids to understand what they were talking about, they spoke German.
She said when her parents didn't want her to know what they were talking about, they would start speaking German. I'm like, nein danke, right? I find it very interesting that, okay, so here's something. How many people drive cars or have ridden in a car? Raise your hand. All right. Do those cars have blind spots? Yes. Typically, where are they? So they're right behind you. Where else? Okay, the sides. Where else? Above you. Okay. Okay, so right by the doors. Okay. And if you drive a Hummer, the whole thing is a blind spot. Right? Are those blind spots your fault? Okay, so let me ask the question this way. Raise your hand if you're on the design team of the car that you drive. It is not your fault. However, it is your what? Responsibility. Right? And there's two ways to find out about blind spots. What are the two ways? You can look or you can have an accident. Right? These things that people taught us about these other groups are not our fault. However, it is our what? Responsibility. All right? I only have a few minutes left, so we're going to cruise a little bit. So I watched this show called What Would You Do on ABC. I'm going to show a clip of one of the episodes, and then I want us to talk about it.
Hello, and welcome to the opening show of our primetime series, What Would You Do? If you see something and you think it's wrong, do you step in or do you step away? What people say and what they do aren't always the same. That's why our hidden cameras are so revealing. In our first scenario, we weren't sure what to expect when our opinionated man behind the counter meets the Muslim woman in a headscarf.
Deep in the heart of Texas, at this little roadside bakery, bigotry is being served with a coffee and beige.
No, ma'am. We don't serve Muslims here.
I'm sorry?
This is America. We're at war with your people.
I don't know what you think I am. I'm just trying to get an apple.
Well, you're a terrorist is what you are. So,
excuse me?
I'm going to take your business elsewhere. We don't serve your kind.
The other customers at this bakery near Waco seem to hear everything, but they barely look at the Muslim woman, even when the language is tough to take.
get back on the camel and go back wherever you came from.
Sir, I'm American. I was born and raised
No,
in
you're
this
not.
country.
Americans don't wear towels on their head.
Muslim Americans say these are words they hear all the time in all parts of the country. But here at the bakery, what the customers don't know is that this Muslim woman and the man behind the counter are actors. The bakery is working with us, all part of a primetime hidden camera experiment on prejudice and patriotism.
Please take your business elsewhere. Am I asking too much?
When no one even tries to help her, she makes a direct appeal.
Sir, would you mind ordering me an apple strudel? That's why I'm here. I can give you the money. I'm not
Please no, sir. I'm not going to let you go.
But when he gives her the cold shoulder, she finally just leaves. And you could have helped her out. You could have spoken up. Why not?
You may speak up for her. Well, if they could try to dig some harm or something, then I would have.
But why not try to set him straight?
I really think that a person that owns his own business should be able to say that they sell to.
She's not American.
Others seem to agree with our actor as to who's an American and who's not. Is it all based on the way we look?
I'm an American citizen. I just would like an apple strudel, please.
Well, I'm sorry. Then why don't you dress like an American? You're
This
so
is for
American.
religious purposes, sir, and I don't think you have any right to say anything.
So I'm religious. I don't wear, Halloween costumes around. I mean, am I wrong here, sir?
Not me.
I run my business the way I want to run.
That's right. Don't put me in there with that huge girl.
This customer is adamant. The man behind the counter is doing the right thing. But the fact is, it's against the law to deny service to someone based on their race or religion.
My name is John Quinones, and I'm with ABC News. What did you think of what you heard here?
I didn't hear anything racist.
He told her he wouldn't serve her.
Well, he could say he wouldn't serve you if you come in barefooted without a shirt on.
But she wasn't barefoot or without a shirt on.
Well, she wasn't dressed right.
What do you mean?
Right in the place, I'd do the same thing.
You wouldn't let Muslims shop at your store?
I sure wouldn't.
We never expected customers to be so candid.
How do I know you don't have a bomb in there?
Watch what happens this time when, once again, our Muslim woman is denied service
This is not right.
and again leaves.
We reserve the right to not serve.
That's right.
Certain kind.
That's right. That's, I appreciate seeing that. I think that's very cool I've ever seen that.
He not only commends the man behind the counter for his discriminatory behavior, but he gives him the thumbs up, not once, but twice,
Good job.
all right, as he leaves.
Can I talk to you, sir, for a second?
But when I approach,
Sir, we're with ABC News.
there is no thumbs up from me.
We staged a little experiment in there to see how people would react to that kind of attitude.
You're not American.
I am an American.
Father telling me I'm not an American.
Who's threatened?
Jack DeVideo is a social psychologist at Yale University.
So when we as Americans feel threatened from the outside, we're going to define ourselves in very rigid fashions. Either you're with me, and if you're not really one of me, then you must be somebody else who's against me.
The young woman in our experiment is an actor, but for this woman, discrimination is all too real. Nahaya Javed helped us design our experiment. Although born in Chicago, she says she's constantly characterized by fellow Americans as the enemy.
They always start off with, you're a terrorist, Osama lover, towel head, camel jockey, on and on.
While attending college in Texas, she says she continually suffered verbal abuse and has even been physically attacked just because she's Muslim.
They assume I'm not from here, and if I tell them I'm American, they're like, no, you're not. Just because you were born here doesn't make you American. And I'm like, so what makes you American?
It's a daily battle.
And I don't feel like living in America, I should have to fight this battle.
Meanwhile, back at the bakery, our actor is at it again.
But how do I know you're not a terrorist? Terrorists look like you.
But this time the customers are sympathizing with the Muslim woman.
Right, I know, but can you blame me?
Yeah, I can't blame you, actually.
Why? What's the problem?
Right, we'll get out of here. You know, stuff actually.
Okay, sir. I'm a good American, all right? We're at war with these people.
My dad's a better. Go yourself.
So is mine.
And he's not the only one who walks out in anger.
Excuse me? No, you're a bad American.
time and again, people speak out with their pocketbooks.
You lowered a couple of customers, just so you know.
But look what happens when this man threatens to leave.
You're not a good American, sir.
I believe I am a good American. My son just came back from serving in the Army for over a year in Iraq, and that has nothing to do with her right.
I understand that, and I hear what you're saying, but
I can't believe you would be so discriminatory. I'm deeply offended by it.
I'm sorry to offend you, sir, but I've got to live with myself.
Seething, the man vows to fight back.
I will let people know this. I've stopped here every time I've come by this place, and I'll never stop here again.
Why did folks get so upset?
They saw an injustice. It's justice that binds us together. It's justice that makes us a society. Any threat to that kind of sense of justice and fairness undermines the entire system.
You're really not considering
No, I'm not.
Perhaps that's why more customers are outraged by our actors' hateful behavior than approve of it.
You're not dressed like an American.
But no one is more persistent than these two young women who can't believe what they're hearing.
Take your jihad, take it back out to the parking lot.
Excuse me?
I mean, I gotta protect my customers, okay?
You're really offensive and disgusting.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to protect you here.
Thank you. You're sick. Like that doesn't mean it. This is a
How do you know?
culture. You're
These people
so
are trying to
ignorant
kill
and
Americans.
disgusting. It is my culture. So you're ready to serve me, but you're not ready to serve her.
You're obviously dressed like an American.
Big deal. She's Muslim.
And unlike the others, they don't just leave in anger. They stand their ground.
So you're going to regulate what people wear?
Yes, because I believe the degree of... No, I'm not the manager.
Can I speak to your manager?
I'm John Quinones from ABC News.
It's only when we catch up with our heroines that they finally let their guards down.
I'm with my friend who's, Muslim, and it's, I've just seen, how people treat them differently. And it really hurts.
Just watching them stand up for what they believe in touches Professor DeVideo.
In a way, they defended America. And I was impressed by that, because they wanted this to be a just society, a just place, a just bakery.
I'm John Quinones.
And remember this man whose son served in Iraq? He's also moved to tears.
Every person deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, no matter their situation, no matter how they're dressed.
Never have we seen reactions so polarized, from a thumbs up for prejudice to an emphatic thumbs down. Two different Americans, both convinced they're patriotic. At the end of the day, 13 people stood up for the Muslim woman, while 6 sided with the clerk. But the majority of the bystanders, 22, did or said absolutely nothing. That's what's most frightening to Muslims like Nahaya, who was watching our experiment. In fact, so frightening that they often avoid going out by themselves.
It's really sad because I'm old enough to be able to do things by myself. I shouldn't need a chaperone all the time. But that one time that I'm alone and something bad might happen, I'd rather be safe than sorry.
It's no wonder this young woman was so moved by the people who came forward to protect a stranger who just happens to be Muslim.
Thank you so much for what you did, and I wish more people would do these types of things, and it would make my life a lot easier.
So there are 13 people who were positive, 6 people who were negative, and 22 who did nothing. I'm going to talk a little bit about the negative 6s. Typically, how do we describe those people? What do we call them?
Bigots.
We call them bigots. What else do we call them? We call them racist. What else do we call them?
Prejudice.
We call them prejudice. So we call these people all these names. And once we call them or we declare that they are these things, do they thank us for that acknowledgement? Do they say, you know what, I really appreciate that you recognize that I'm a racist. Great! What do? They deny it. Why? Do you have a relative or someone or a friend or someone that you've been around that has exhibited those behaviors? That racist or bigoted or whatever behaviors, right? Were they a card-carrying member? If I were to ask those people if they were racist, what would they tell me? No, I'm not racist. I have some kind of good example as to why I feel this way about this thing, because this black man ran over my foot. Right? Well, one thing that I know, I was watching, has anyone seen the movie Marley and Me? I cried like a baby. Right? And I'm going to give it away because it's on Netflix. So if you so in Marley and Me, and actually I also discovered this on the Animal Planet. So they were following this coven of wolves, this pack of wolves from puppies. So they were and they're biting each other, and they followed their lifespan, and they followed them until they're adults, and they were focusing on this big elk hunt. And so all the wolves, and they have all this narration about what the wolves are doing. I don't know how they get into wolves' brains to know exactly what they're thinking, right? But anyway, they do this whole narration, and they're going to hunt this elk. It was either elk or a moose, I can't remember. But anyway, so they're in the pack, and one of the wolves jumps up on the back of the elk and bites at him and stuff, and the elk kicks him. Boom! Breaks the hip of the wolf. What's the wolf's new destiny? Death, because there are no hospitals in the forest, right? So he knows that he's going to die. The rest of the pack knows he's going to die. And they're kind of like, sorry, dude, right? So what does that wolf decide to do? Does he stay with the pack? If he stays with the pack, what does he do for the pack?
Drags him down.
He drags him down. The pack is as strong as his weakest member, right? So he leaves the pack. And what is his death? So wolves are pack animals. They need to be with each other to really survive. And so he goes off by himself. And so what's his destiny? Death. A lot of times when we talk about these bigoted or racist people, one of the things that they forget is that they're disconnected, and mostly because we disconnect them. Raise your hand if you are a good person. I think it's interesting because when it comes to these bigoted and racist folks, we nice people want nothing to do with them. And I learned this lesson in high school. This was a tough lesson to learn because high school kids can be cruel. My mother was frying fish, and we would congregate in the kitchen and talk. And this was a place where we would hang out. And so we would also, there was an ironing board in the kitchen, and we'd also lay out our clothes for school in the kitchen, right? So you lay out your school clothes, and my mother's frying fish, and I didn't think anything of it. I ironed my clothes, went off to school, and what did I smell like? Fish. Why did I smell like fish? Because I was in the kitchen. What do the people who are around you smell like? Your goodness. Does your goodness rub off on them? These negative sixes weren't born that way. I love the negative sixes. I love racist people because I know as a teacher what? That they learn this way, which means that there's a chance that I can teach them something else. But I can only teach them if they're in my classroom. So if I separate myself from these folks, then I can't be helpful in bringing them back, right? What would happen if I exclusively gave orange juice to an orange tree? What would happen to the orange tree? It would die. The oranges are not for the orange tree. Your gifts and talents are not for you. The things that you do well, and that part of what has happened in our Western society is that we think that our gifts and talents are supposed to benefit us. No, they're supposed to benefit somebody else. So all that goodness that you have, if it's not being shared with somebody else, you're no good. And then there's the 22. And it's real easy to get on the 22 and say, well, you should have stood up and did something. Why do you think people don't?
Afraid.
They're afraid.
Or they don't care.
Or they don't care. Or what else?
They don't want to be looked at the same way.
They don't want to be looked at the same way. Now, this is the interesting thing, and I only have like 4 minutes, so I got to hit this hard. Anyone in the armed services? Been in the armed services? Please raise your hand. Okay. So the armed services knows something about the human being. One of the things that they know is that courage is built on something. And what is courage built on?
The ability to do the right thing in a time of danger.
Okay. What else? It's a 4-letter word. Fear. Now, this is an interesting thing. Fear has also two definitions or connotations. One is that negative anxiety that one gets about uncertainty. Fear. But then fear is also respect for the thing that is bigger or greater than you. So there's the fear of the respect, and then there's the fear of the uncertainty. But courage is taking fear, swallowing it, eating it, having the respect for it, saying that this is bigger than me and I respect it, and gathering the resources and practices to overcome it and do it anyway. Most of the time, the why people don't speak up is because they haven't practiced speaking up. They haven't thought about this situation. And so what I would like to offer you is that I want you to become one of my allies, because I will be an ally for you. You will be able to speak up on my behalf and fight wars for me that I will never know exist. And guess what I will do as your ally? The same thing. My name is Andre Koen. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Running over the whole story. This is hysterical. There are 3 little girls in our neighborhood. One was a little black girl, 2 little white girls, one was my little girl. And the little girl that was black, she was mad at my daughter, and she ran over her foot with her Barbie Jeep. And when you said that, I didn't remember it right away, but as soon as I started dying, I thought that they made up and everything was fine, but it was so hysterical because she ran over her foot.
Oh, thank you so much.
So.
That is so
anyway,
funny.
Yeah, it was just cute. Thank you.
You are very good. Thank you. You're very welcome.
Good job, Andre.
All right, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. So, yeah.
Good. Thank you. No problem. Thank you. Where'd I grow up? In Ohio.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Brandon.
Dayton, Ohio. So.
Hanover, right outside of St. Michael, Minnesota.
Oh, cool.
Very good.
Thank you,
Very
Sue.
good.
Thank you. Hello, how are you? Good morning.
German. They had the same thing about the Japanese, but on the other spectrum, because my uncle was killed in World War II. So because he was killed by a Japanese sniper.
We're bad. Yep. And
When I had a concussion that adopted a child.
how did that go over?
Not too well.
Hello.
Just like anything, honor then for your once. You register online.